Are you looking for a character build capable of dealing hundreds of points of damage a turn, with little to no resource expenditure? Do you want to play a Gish or Spell Sword, capable of seamlessly weaving together weapon attacks and spells, without having to use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel? Are you looking for a character that's not only an excellent party face, but also capable of handling all of your sleight of hand and stealth needs? Then this dual-wielding Archfey Warlock might be the build for you. Hail, adventurer. I'm going to walk you through this Warlock, Rogue, Fighter multi-class build. We're going to dual-wield rapiers while still maxing out our charisma thanks to Warlock's Pact of the Blade feature. And we're going to stack multiple instances of our charisma modifier thanks to Arcane Synergy and the Harmonic Dueler's Mellow Harmony action. But before we dive into the build, I have to thank Raid Shadow Legends for kindly sponsoring this video and making sure that I can both bring you a new video and eat this week. And I know what you're thinking. Just another YouTuber shilling for some lame, grindy, pay-to-win mobile game. I'll probably tell you to scan the QR code on the screen or click the link in the description to download the game today and get 2 free epic champions as you level up, and that there's a promo code for more that I'll give you in this video. But I have to tell you, I've never seen a game that's more interested in rectifying misconceptions about itself. Raid has been around for 5 years now, believe it or not, and with that time comes content. There are over 800 heroes to collect and fight with over 40 different bosses in the PvE side of the game, as well as the PvP and clan versus clan mode. There's a ton to do in game, and it isn't nearly as grindy as some other mobile games I've tried out. Right now, my girl Nizana is carrying me through the game's campaign, and there's a surprising depth of strategy as you build a team of heroes with diverse abilities to fight with, and it's completely free to play. There are, of course, options in the shop you can buy to enhance your experience, but I haven't spent a dime yet, and I'm having a blast with it when I'd otherwise just be doom scrolling Reddit. And it's never been better to be a new player, because not only will you get the free heroes Tyrell and Rector Drath from following my link, but you'll also be entered into a contest to win one of 5 gaming consoles and 10k in total value of Amazon gift cards. So download Raid Shadow Legends today and join my clan, the Cauldron, with clan tag UVAZ. And you can use the promo code SPRINGHUNT24 for a limited time for even more in-game goodies. Now back to the video. Since I'm planning on building this character as an Archfey Warlock, I don't think it fits any of the Origin companions particularly well. Will is certainly the best fit, but I would go with Fiend Warlock instead of Archfey. But I think it fits best on a custom character like the Dark Urge or Tav. I'm going to build this character out as Tav, so I can make some more custom background choices for the purposes of this video. You can pick any race for the character that you have in mind. We don't need the features of any particular race to make this build function, but any of the normal standouts apply here. Halfling for their Halfling luck feature to reroll 1s. Githyanki make excellent Gish, since that's where the name comes from. Astral Knowledge is a great ability to gain more skill access, and being able to cast Misty Step as a racial ability is a great mobility bonus for any melee character. Wood Elves for their increased movement has the same effect. Basically all the races have something to offer, except for maybe poor Dragonborn, but they're probably the coolest race to make up for it. But for this swashbuckling Warlock build, I think I'm going to go with Drow. This will give us proficiency in Perception, superior Dark Vision, immunity to sleep, and advantage on saving throws against being charmed. Then your subrace is basically just a flavor choice. Seldarine would be more of the good character choice, whereas Lolth is more meant for evil characters. But I have a particular item in mind for the build that will require us to make a questionable choice or two, so I'm going to stick with that. Then for our class, we're going to actually start this character out as a rogue. We're going to be taking mostly Warlock levels, but whenever you're multi-classing with rogue, it usually makes sense to take it at the first level because you'll get better skill access. I'm going to build this character as if you were leveling naturally throughout the game, but if you're alright with a couple of respecs, I would probably just start out as a Warlock and take that class level 6 or 7 before respecking to this progression. It's important to note that the DCs of scrolls and some items are based off your newest multi-class, so even if Warlock is your last level, if it wasn't the last class added to your character, you won't necessarily get to use charisma for those saving throws. So it's important to start with our non-charisma classes and end with a charisma one. As a rogue, we get sneak attack for a little bonus damage once per turn. This is applied if we have advantage on the attack, or the target has one of our allies within 1.5 meters of them, so long as we don't also have disadvantage. We'll also get expertise as a rogue, but we'll look at that once we get to our skills. Now for our background, you can really pick anything that suits your character. It's nice to have an idea in your head of who your character was before the events of the game start to unfold. For this character, I imagine their Warlock patron is some higher up in the Sealy Court in the Feywilds, so they might have some standing with the nobility there, so noble might make sense. If you're looking specifically at the skills offered, you're looking mostly at dexterity and charisma based skills, but I would avoid performance and deception because we're going to get those through a feat. Now we can look at our ability scores, and since we're planning on being mainly a Warlock, we're going to clear all these away. I'm going to want my +2 in my charisma and +1 in dexterity. And I want to max this charisma out to 17. And I still want a reasonable dexterity score. I want to bring this up to 16. We're typically going to wear no armor or light armor, so we still want a solid bonus to those dexterity skills, our armor class, and our initiative. Then we want a little bit of health, so we're going to bring our constitution up to 14. This will help us keep concentration on spells and give us an okay health pool. We'll still be a little bit squishy, but I think this 14 is alright. And with our last 2 points, we'll put our wisdom up. This is a really important saving throw, so you definitely don't want a negative in it. And we should be set there, so we're going to look at our proficiencies. We already have persuasion, perception, and history from our background and race choices. And we're going to get deception and performance from a feat, so I don't want to take that right now, but I do want all of these dexterity skills, acrobatics, sleight of hand, and stealth. So then I'd make your last choice between investigation and insight, probably. Since we have a negative in our intelligence, I think it's better to take the insight. That feat I want to take is going to give us expertise in deception and performance as well, so I want to keep my expertise choices on stealth and sleight of hand. This is a great spread for your main character because you'll be able to handle all of the dialogue checks, and you won't have to switch to a companion to lockpick and disarm traps. So we'll confirm that, and since I'm not going to spend 20 hours taking this character from level 1 to 12, we're going to have our other drow friend Minthara take us through the rest of the build. Now we're not going to take new rogue levels just yet. Instead, what I want to do is multi-class into fighter. This gives us second win, which is unfortunately not going to scale, since this is the only fighter level we're going to take, but what we're actually here for is the fighting style 2-weapon fighting. We're going to be making a lot of bonus action attacks, and our whole build is built around stacking our ability modifier on our weapon attacks multiple times, so we want to make sure we have that first natural application from 2-weapon fighting. I consider trying to get this from ranger instead, but that requires a deeper level investment, which would rob us of some of our higher level warlock spells. There's also some gloves in the game that give you 2-weapon fighting, but I just think there are some much stronger choices, so I'd rather get it from a class feature. And then we can go to level 3. This is where we're finally going to take our first warlock level. This will give us all of the classes that we're planning on multi-classing into, so we don't have to worry about where our charisma is being applied to. Now naturally as a warlock, we're going to be taking Eldritch Blast, and for our second cantrip, I think the right choice is always Friends at the start. This is just a great boost to a ton of different dialogue checks. If you use it on the friendly NPC, then there is a chance they'll get mad if you stick around too long, but if you leave the area quickly or are planning on attacking this creature anyway, then it'll make any checks you're trying to make a lot easier. Now for a subclass, if you're going with Will, you could pick Fiend. All 3 of these subclasses are good. Obviously the Great Old One's Mortal Reminder is great if you want to build a little bit of critical hit chance, but thematically for this build, I really like the Archfey. I think the Fey really evoke this swashbucklery, charismatic fighter type character. This gives us the Fey Presence action, which lets you charm or frighten creatures in a small AoE around you, once per short rest. Since we're a squishy melee character, it's very possible that we can get overwhelmed by enemies, so this is actually a pretty solid ability, especially in the early game. Then for our spells, I'm going to keep one of our Archfey spells for now, probably a Fairy Fire. Warlocks don't typically have a great way to give themselves advantage. This is able to cover that, and I think we always want to take up Hex, especially since we're a character that's going to be making a lot of weapon attacks eventually. We can get a lot more mileage out of Hex than some other builds. Now let's move on to level 4. We're going to stay in Warlock this level because we want access to our Eldritch Invocations. First we get to pick a new spell, and I'd probably just take Sleep here. It's actually a really solid early game spell, and an easy one to swap out as we continue to gain higher level spells. Then for our invocations, you're absolutely going to take Agonizing Blast. And then your other choice is kind of going to depend. If you're using clothing instead of armor, you might want Armor of Shadows. You could have another character cast Mage Armor on you, but if that's not an option, then this will really boost your AC. But since we're a fighter in the early game, we can basically wear any armor with the highest armor class that isn't heavy armor. And I think taking Beast Speech for Speak with Animals makes a lot of sense on a Fey Warlock. If any of the subclasses could talk to animals, I think it would be this one, but it's also really easy to get this from scrolls and potions, so you probably don't need to take it as an invocation. Devil's Sight is always a solid choice and one we probably want to pick up eventually, but I'm not sure that we need it at this level, especially since we already have Dark Vision. So I think I'm going to take Repelling Blast, and at this point our main turns are going to involve using our action to cast Eldritch Blast and then making offhand weapon attacks with our bonus action. So you'll want to pay special attention to when you have Repelling Blast active, because sometimes you might not want to push an enemy out of your reach, but I think the utility of being able to push enemies into hazards or off cliffs is worth taking this feature now. So now we'll move on to level 5. And the nice thing about this build is that since we're making our attacks with our bonus actions mostly and using our action to cast spells, Eldritch Blast is going to scale automatically since the extra beams are tied to your character level and not your warlock level. And with our decent dexterity score, I'm not too worried about getting Pact of the Blade super early, so I actually want to switch back to Rogue for a couple of levels. Rogue level 2 gives us Cunning action, so now we can hide, dash, and disengage as a bonus action, which gives our warlock some mobility that it typically doesn't otherwise get. Then we're going to go to level 6 and level 3 Rogue, where naturally we're going to take the Thief subclass. The extra bonus action from Fast Hands is basically a must pick on any dual wielding build, so for us this is basically like getting extra attack, except that we can also just use that extra bonus action for anything else, from cunning action to dipping our weapons in poison or drinking a potion. Then we also gain resistance to fall damage, which is fine. Now I want to take one more level of Rogue just to finally get our first feat. And this is why I said earlier that you might want to just be a pure Warlock up until this level and then respec, because it's really about now that this build is going to start coming online. So you might feel a little bit weaker in the early game, but you're basically just as strong as any Blaster Warlock, so it probably doesn't make that much difference. So the feat I want to take at this level is Actor. This will round out our Charisma to 18 for that +4 bonus and give us expertise in Deception and Performance. So now we have expertise in 4 separate skills, and we're actually going to be using that performance check for one of our late game items. But now with those rogue levels out of the way, we can swap back to Warlock and finally pick up Pact of the Blade. We also get level 2 spell slots here. I think Misty Step is typically an important pickup. The extra mobility this provides is great for a melee character, although thanks to Cunning Action, we probably need it less than some other Warlock builds. So we get our Pact boon, and we're going to take Pact of the Blade. Now that our Charisma is higher than our Dexterity, it'll be much better to have at least one of our weapons using it. And there are 2 separate items in Act 2 that let you use your spellcasting modifier instead of Dexterity or Strength, so we can pick up one of those for our offhand weapon. Then we can replace the spell here, and at this point Sleep will have fallen off pretty significantly. I'll probably swap it out for one of these other level 2 spells. Cloud of Daggers, Crown of Madness, Darkness, Hold Person, and Invisibility are all really solid spells. I'm going to take Crown of Madness, just because I think the idea of charming a creature to fight for you is really fitting for an Archfey Warlock. Now at level 9 we can get to level 4 Warlock for our second feat. For our cantrips, you could take Minor Illusion or Blade Ward, but it's also really important to have Bone Chill on at least one of your characters. This will make any fight against healing enemies feel a lot easier. Then for our spell, I think I'm going to take Invisibility. Again, I think it just kind of fits a Fey Warlock, and we're already going to have Darkness as a racial feature. You can even replace the second spell here. You're probably not casting Fairy Fire much anymore, so I might swap that out, and I might even just go for Armor of Agathis here for a little bit of extra tankiness. Confirm that, and then for our feat, we're going to take Dual Wielder. At this point, we've only been able to dual wield with light weapons, but the weapons we want for the end game are both rapiers, so we're going to need this feat to use them together. This also gives a +1 to the armor class of this otherwise squishy character. It would kind of be nice to be able to also get our Charisma to 20, but we can use an item to get it to 20, and if you use Ethel's Hair and the Mirror of Loss in this character, you can actually still get up to 24 Charisma. So let's hit level 5 Warlock, which is the Warlock's biggest power spike. We'll now get extra attack with our Pact weapon, so now we can make 2 melee attacks with our main hand and 2 melee attacks with our bonus actions. And once we start stacking on-hit effects with items, we're going to be dealing huge amounts of damage. We also get level 3 spells, and we want to pick up Counterspell and Hunger of Hadar at this level. We also get another Eldritch Invocation, and here I'm probably going to take Devil's Sight, unless I'm specifically taking the Potent Robes, in which case I definitely want Mage Armor for this character, but if you have a wizard in your party casting it, then you can still take Devil's Sight instead. And I'm going to be using some light armor, so this makes the most sense for this character. Then we have to swap something out. Maybe you're finding that you're not getting enough temporary hit points with Armor of Agathis, or maybe Hex has fallen off at this point, so we're going to swap that out for Hunger of Hadar. Then we can move to level 6. Here we actually get a pretty cool ability from being a Fey Warlock. Upon taking damage, we can use Misty Escape to become invisible as a reaction, and then on our next turn we get a free casting of Misty Step. We can do this once per short rest. Now unfortunately, it doesn't quite work like Tabletop, where you get to turn invisible and Misty Step as part of the same reaction, so enemies will walk up and try to detect you, but since we have expertise in stealth, we're pretty good at maintaining that invisibility. I feel like I've already said it a half a dozen times, but since we're pretty squishy, this is a great way to avoid some damage. Now we also get another spell here. I think Fear, Grant Flight, Hypnotic Pattern, and Plant Growth are all really solid choices. I'm going to take Plant Growth just because it's specifically an Archfey spell, and since it doesn't require concentration, we can use it in tandem with other effects like Darkness and Hunger of Hadar. We can also replace another spell here. Maybe I'm not using Crown of Madness as much, so I can upgrade it to a wider range effect like Hypnotic Pattern. And now we can move on to our final level. At Warlock level 7, we have 4th level spells, and we get access to Greater Invisibility. Now this spell can be tough to use effectively. We turn invisible, but then every time we make an action, we have to roll a stealth check to maintain that invisibility. Since we have expertise on stealth, we're pretty good at making those checks, but each time we make one, the DC increases. So if you really want to make the most out of this spell, you can have allies cast Pass Without a Trace and Cat's Grace on you. This will give you advantage on the stealth checks and a flat +10. So basically the lowest you can roll is a 22. This should let you maintain it for a while. This is one of the few builds that gains access to this spell and can make good use of it. So make it easier to apply sneak attack and really up our hit chance. We also get one more Eldritch Invocation. I think our best choices are either Mire the Mind for slow or Dreadful Word for confusion. Confusion is probably the stronger spell, although it doesn't always seem to work quite right, so Mire the Mind would be the safer bet. You'd have to test for yourself and see what works better for you. And let's talk quickly about a couple of other multi-class options, and then then get into equipment where everything really comes together. So there are a few other ways we can build this, and most of them just involve sacrificing greater invisibility. The first would actually just be going a full 12 levels into Warlock. This could get us some powerful level 5 spells, like Hold Monster and Dominate Person, as well as the Life Drinker Invocation at level 12. This would let us apply our Charisma bonus as necrotic damage on all of our weapon attacks. Now this does give up some of our expertise, as well as our second bonus action, and I think the additional attack from the extra bonus action would actually deal more damage than the necrotic damage from Life Drinker, and since we wouldn't have 2 weapon fighting, you'd probably need to use the gloves to give you that. But I still think that that would be a strong build, and I have a pure Pact of the Blade Fiend Warlock build on the channel if you want to check out something like that. Otherwise, we could keep the rogue levels, sacrifice a couple of our Warlock levels so we lose greater invisibility, but you could take 2 levels of Paladin for smites. This would give you a big Nova damage boost. You'd have 2 level 3 Warlock spells to use on smites each short rest, but I think our access to powerful spells is kind of what makes Warlocks good. So I'm not really sure that those spell slots would get more mileage out of smites compared to just casting something like Hunger of Hadar. And the last class that would pair really well with this kind of build is Swordsbard. This class and Swordsbards are kind of trying to do the same thing, just trying to make weapon attacks and cast big spells. Warlock can provide bards with Pact of the Blade and strong spell choices, and Swordsbard would give us that 2 weapon fighting style, expertise, and potentially up our damage thanks to slashing flourishes hitting multiple targets. But you want at least 5 levels of Swordsbard so that your bardic inspiration comes back on short rests, which means we're taking at least 5 levels of Bard and 5 levels of Warlock, so we wouldn't have room for the rogue levels. You could go 6 Swordsbard, 3 Warlock, 3 Rogue, but then we're missing a feat that we kind of need, and I really want this to be a Warlock build first, and have those cool invisibility options with greater invisibility and Misty Escape. But there are a ton of different ways you could build this character that would all be powerful. Now let's get into items. Our elixir of choice is going to be Bloodlust elixirs. That extra action is going to be a really big part of our kit. We're going to be gaining arcane synergy by casting Eldritch Blast, and since you can't use extra attack on the extra action from Bloodlust in Honor mode, this is a great action to use for our Eldritch Blast to keep up that arcane synergy. You might use your first action to start a fight with Eldritch Blast to get that first stack of arcane synergy up, and then as you carve through enemies with your weapon attacks, you can use the additional actions you gain to keep casting Eldritch Blast and maintain the buff. And we want to make sure we're hitting enemies to get kills to keep activating this extra action, so weapon coatings that boost our hit chance, like Oil of Accuracy and Oil of Sharpness, are both really good for this character. And our main hand weapon is only going to be a +1 rapier, so it's a great target for the Drake Throat Glaive. If you drop the Harmonic Dueler and cast Draconic Elemental weapon on it, when you pick it back up and equip it, it will have that extra +1 and extra damage. And since we have the dual wielder feat, you can also equip the Flail of Ages in your offhand, and then cast its version of elemental weapon to apply that bonus again to your main hand weapon. So you could target the Harmonic Dueler twice, or you could target each of your rapiers once. The most important piece of gear we're going to get from Act 1 is the Ring of Arcane Synergy. This is the crux of the build, the main way we're going to apply Arcane Synergy throughout the game. This just gives us the stacks every time we cast a cantrip, which is why in the early game you'll spend a lot of your actions casting Eldritch Blast, and then hopefully using Bloodlust Elixir actions to cast it as the game goes on. We also get the Diadem of Arcane Synergy in this act, which makes it so that whenever you inflict a condition, you gain Arcane Synergy stacks. This is definitely a solid item, but I think we just have better options later in the game. For the early game, you're going to need light weapons to dual wield. I think your best options are the Baneful, which actually gets special properties when it's bound as a packed weapon, giving it an extra +1 to damage and attack rolls, and possibly inflicting enemies with Bane. Then one of the other strongest early game light weapons is the Knife of the Undermountain King. We're not really building for critical hit chance, but it's nice to have, and then you can pass this off to another character once you get your late game weapons. It's just one of our most solid options to start with. And then probably our best early game handwear are the Daredevil gloves. This gives us a +1 bonus to our Eldritch Blast spell attack rolls, and since we're going to be weaving Eldritch Blast in with melee attacks, the Daredevil proximity passive, removing the disadvantage from ranged spell attacks while threatened, will really help your hit chance with this playstyle. There isn't any footwear that particularly helps us, so the Disintegrating Nightwalkers is just a solid choice. The extra Misty Step and immunity to a couple surfaces is just great on any character. The same thing kind of goes for necklaces. There aren't any ones in particular that are great for the build, so the Amulet of Misty Step is already on this character, as well as the Silver Pendant. You want guidance on your team somewhere, so this might be a good way to do that. Then for our second ring slot outside of the Ring of Arcane Synergy, Caustic Band is great on any character that makes a lot of weapon attacks, although we won't be making a ton of them until kind of later in the game, so it might be better on a different martial character. Otherwise, the Ring of Protection is a great way to give this character a little bit of extra survivability. Then you'll find the Drake Throat Glaive in Act 2, as well as the Helmet of Arcane Acuity. This is typically a solid choice on any character that's making weapon attacks and casting spells, although a lot of our spells don't particularly rely on enemies failing saving throws, so this might be better on a different character. But you can also purposely build around it with certain spell choices. Then the Potent Robes are one of our more solid armor choices. This is clothing, so you'll want mage armor somehow, but it really boosts the damage of your Eldritch Blasts, and is probably better suited to a good aligned character that won't get the Act 3 armor we want. Then we also get the Cloak of Protection in Act 2. Like the Ring of Protection, just a great way to add a little bit of extra survivability to this character. And similarly, we have the Amulet Amulet of the Harpers, which gives us advantage on wisdom saving throws and a casting of the shield spell, which this character otherwise doesn't have. Finally, in Act 2, we get one of our late game rapiers. We might not quite have the dual wielder feat when we get this, but this rapier gives us a +1 to our spell save DC and uses our spell casting ability modifier for attack and damage rolls instead of dexterity or strength. So this is our perfect offhand weapon. It even gives us a special casting of Planar Ally to summon a Cambion, which is a good way to try and take some of the heat off of our character, as well as keep combat going when we're coming in and out of invisibility sometimes. We can pick up the Callous Glow Ring, so if you can have an ally cast light on you, or you otherwise have it from a racial feature or something like that, it'll apply 2 radiant damage to all of our damage. So that means it'll apply both to our weapon attacks and our Eldritch Blast beams, which makes it a little bit better for us in Caustic Band. Then in Act 3, we'll get our second rapier, the Harmonic Dueler. This is an unassuming +1 rapier, but the Mellow Harmony class action lets us make a DC 15 performance check, and if we succeed the check, we apply our Charisma bonus an additional time to weapon damage. So once this is a packed weapon, both of our rapiers will be using Charisma. They'll apply the Charisma bonus a second time when we have Arcane Synergy up, and a third time with Mellow Harmony. And we can use Birthright for a +2 to our Charisma to make sure that each of those bonuses is at least a +5, but depending on your choices in the game, you can get it higher. Then we can swap out the Cloak of Protection for the Cloak of Displacement. Honestly, I think these two are pretty equal. The disadvantage to attacks might be a little bit better, but it's pretty close. Then the other crux of this build is the Bhaal Armour. All those extra instances of our Charisma modifier on our damage all count as base weapon damage, so the Aura of Murder granting enemies vulnerability to piercing damage doubles all of that damage. So suddenly that flat +15 from our 3 instances of Charisma modifier is actually a flat 30 damage on each attack. And since we can make 4 attacks, literally just making weapon attacks on each of our turns will make us deal a minimum of 120 damage. Then you can start adding in other bonuses, the Bloodlust action, and we become this very powerful glass cannon character. The +2 to initiative is a nice bonus too. I think our best in slot handwear is the Helldusk gloves. This gives us a +1 bonus to spell attack rolls and spell save DC, and it's not listed here, but it also gives you a +1 bonus to weapon attacks, as well as that 1d6 fire damage and weapon damage rolls. This is just a great pair of all-rounder gloves that gives us a bonus to everything that we're trying to do. Then you can also upgrade the Disintegrating Nightwalkers to the Helldusk boots. They do kind of similar things, but the Hellcrawler teleport deals some damage. You get Infernal Evasion to try and succeed on a saving throw you would otherwise fail, and you get to ignore difficult terrain, can't be forcibly moved, and can't be knocked prone. Then since we won't be using a bow, we just want the best stat bow that we can get, which I think is the Hellrider bow. The +3 initiative with the +2 from the Bhaal Armour and a +3 from our dexterity will basically guarantee that we're going first all the time. Very few creatures can beat a +8. Probably our best in slot necklace is the Amulet of Greater Health. This helps us with Constitution saving throws for our spell concentration, and then boosting our Constitution score to 23 really makes us a lot less squishy. You could also use the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel on this character, but I don't really think that it's necessary. The main spell we're going to be casting is Eldritch Blast, which the Band of the Mystic Scoundrel doesn't help us with, and we're going to try to always have Bloodlust elixirs if we do want to cast a big spell and still make 2 attacks with our main action. It's obviously not a bad item, it's still good on this character. I just don't think we need it as much as some other characters like this might. There's also probably some space here to replace either our handwear or our boots to build for Reverberation or Radiating Orbs, but I think it's nice to build a character that doesn't need any of the broken item statuses. So as always, the last thing I want to talk about in this video is some character synergy with other party members. This Warlock is a glass cannon that deals a ton of damage, but still has the option to cast some big controlling spells, and can even avoid getting hit by casting Invisibility and Greater Invisibility. The one thing that Warlocks don't get any of is support, so this character is great beside a Cleric or a Lore Bard. Warlocks especially like Bards, since they get all their resources back on short rests. The extra short rest from Song of Rest is a huge boost for this character. Then you also benefit from having other characters that can take a little bit of the pressure off of this character. So big tanky frontliners like Fighters and Barbarians are really great beside this character, especially a Barbarian that usually has a little bit lower AC, so enemies might target them in favor of the Warlock. And they can also potentially grant advantage to attacks on this Warlock, either by knocking creatures prone with things like Trip Attack, or through the Wildheart Barbarian's Wolfheart passive. I really hope this build can help you play out all your swashbuckling and spellcasting hybrid fantasies. Spell swords or gishes are my favorite types of characters to play. I have a dozen more different ideas on how to build this kind of character. So if you want to see any particular character builds, make sure to let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed the build, it really helps me fight against the YouTube algorithm. If you like the video, subscribe or leave a comment. I've gotten lots of supportive comments from people, and I really appreciate it. I'm putting up new build guides every week, so make sure you hit that notification bell so that you never miss a video. Don't forget to use the link in the description to download Raid Shadow Legends for 2 free heroes, and use promo code SPRINGHUNT24 for a bunch of free stuff. And until the next time, happy adventuring.